I'm Rick Wagner. I'm here at SDSC along with my partner, Andrea Zonca. Um, and welcome to the cheap and fair Building a Serverless Research Data Repository tutorial. So to give you an idea what we're going to be doing for the next 3 hours, maybe a little bit less, hopefully not a little bit more. This is a quick outline. So what we're going to do through these slides, I'm going to give you an introduction, and then there was some work that you need to do to get set up and get Globus set up for you. It'll only take a few minutes. So on the next slide, I'll give you some instructions, or on the next couple of slides, I'll give you some instructions, and you can do those in the background. Then once you've got the setup, you'll be logging into our Jupyter Hub instance. And Andrea is going to walk you through one of several notebooks. The notebooks show you the technical details of how you manage the data, what it's like to work with GitHub pages. And then in between, we're going to have a couple of short presentations that I'll give on, the short background on fair data. And then one of the more complex topics, try to give you a quick summary on the concept of identifiers and how they relate to what we call landing pages for data sets. And these notebooks, like one is you'll do the collection, the catalog, I'll explain these components. And then something that we're really excited about is the fact that now with Globus collection supporting HDBS access for data, we can enhance the catalog. We can make it less of just a repository, but more of a portal for interactive use, all the way to including interacting with restricted data. So, and we'll get a break in there because I know that 3 hours is a long time. And if you know that's too long to be sitting in one spot. So with that, technical requirements. I'm willing to bet everyone here right now has an internet connection that you're able to use to hear and see stuff. For this, the way we've set it up, you just need a web browser. That's why we're running the Jupyter Hub instance. I know the struggles with tutorials when people have to install stuff on their laptops and things like that. The repositories that we created, you can run them on your laptops, but we like to ensure that you've got the necessary software packages. There's not many, but let's not drive everyone into Python dependency hell early on a Monday. During the tutorial, please communicate with whatever is most comfortable for you. We don't want people getting stuck. We want to inform. So use the chat. We'll have Jennifer here if we don't notice something. If you want to use the reaction to raise your hand, raise your voice. And then depending on who's doing what, we'll try and help you out. And if we need to, we'll call a stop and get through stuff. You can have your camera on if you're comfortable. That's up to you. And then something that I find really useful is in the reactions of the, let me see if I can find it. There's, maybe Andrea, you can do it. Can you throw up a yes? There we go. Yes. So sometimes we'll be working through a step and want to make sure that everyone gets through it. Just use the yes or no reaction because we want to make sure that everyone's gone as far as they'd like to before we continue. Okay, with that, here are the setup steps. You are going to be joining GitHub, signing up for an account if you don't have one already. And then depending on whether or not you have an existing Globus account or you don't, if you have an existing one, what you'll want to do is link that account to your current Globus account. And in the instructions document, can we put that in the chat? The link to the setup. You'll want to link your GitHub identity when you log in. And if not, you'll create a new Globus account. And then there's an instruction on how to join a group. And let me just, I will show this page briefly, just so that we make sure that everyone sees it. Click. Here we go. Yeah, so this is the page that you'll find, and there's the setup, and it just shows you the links to join GitHub if you need to, join the Globus, join Globus if you haven't already, and then whether or not to link your account, and then join this particular group. So back to PowerPoint. Oops. To Zoom and back to PowerPoint. Okay, so you can do that in the background while I'm going through this introduction to the concept of the cheap and fair data repository. This is going to take us about 10 minutes. So, and again, if you have questions, you know, put them in, and after we get through this, we'll go in and approve your membership request to the group. And several of you have done it already, so you don't need to do it again. All right, so how did this all get started? Well, it was an idea that I'd seen when, in full disclosure, I used to work for Globus at the University of Chicago, and there was a group at Argonne that was using Read the Docs to publish a summary of data sets hosted at Argonne for X-ray tomography. These were reference data sets. And I really was inspired by this idea. So when Andrea and I were talking about the CMBS4 project, this is the Cosmic Microwave Background Next Generation Experiment, where they have some classic research project needs. They need to be able to share data sets with collaborators, and the sizes vary greatly, and they're sort of maturing and developing in their data publication and data management practices. I was like, let's try this thing where, to minimize the workload on the project, if you're okay with having the catalog, the discoverability of your data sets be public, we can use GitHub Pages. And then all you have to do is maintain some markdown files for your data sets and organize them. And you can easily get them out to the public or your collaborators based on where the data is. And the advantage to this is by establishing the metadata standards for the project and sort of the processes. In the future, as they get closer to publishing data sets as part of public, as part of into data repositories for curation and things like that, they've already sort of built up how they define a data set and how they describe it in a way that's interoperable with other standards. So you can go to data.cmb-s4.org to see how we did this. And the motivation for this thinking was something that I'd seen even as I was designing and developing data repositories, is that there's kind of this missing middle, and I'm being completely hyperbolic here. Clearly there is a continuum, but I like being like, no, that's one or the other. That there are tools like iRods and Dataverse and DSpace, and there was ones called Fedora and things like that, and even the Django portal framework that I developed or architected at Globus. These self-hosted and on-prem solutions are very, very capable. They've got a lot of extensibility, but you have to maintain them. And they're really kind of an institutional scale solution, like either, a data center or a library or a large group. It's not just, oh, great, now I'm running another Linux server and maintaining stuff. And so like they're in one category. The public or shared repositories, like Dryad is this phenomenal resource that we have access to at the University of California. And then there's Zenodo that, people, anyone can put data into, but they're largely open data solutions. Not all of them. Some of them will do restricted, but they're relatively fixed in terms of their features. They lack extensibility. You can't put custom themes on them, generally have custom URLs and stuff. So there's a trade-off. It's like, how do you find a balance where you're not managing a bunch of stuff and you're getting the flexibility that you need early on? And so, by the way, there's a link in here on the slides that you can access from the repo that talks about our comparison chart. It's really good if you're interested in this topic. So to come up with how do we rethink this? It's like, all right, how do we define what a data repository is? What are the fundamental components that we need to build on? And so the operational definition that we use is that a data repository is a set of data sets which are organized and accessible from a collection. That's what holds the files. And that these must be described and discoverable in a catalog. And that all of this is managed by one or more policies. So like who can access it, how long you keep it and stuff. But that also, that when I think to examples like a well-run small library, that the quality of that repository is based on the policies that they choose and how well they're implemented. So for example, if you choose a policy that data must be described with the minimum subset of metadata from DataSite and schema.org, you need to be consistent about that and make sure that it's actually enforced. If you say that data must always be accessible over HTTPS, then you've got to make sure that anything that you consider to be part of the repository is accessible over HTTPS. And so this isn't necessarily so much about the software, but about consistency. And so the software, those tools I mentioned to you earlier, the advantages they have is they help to improve the quality by enforcing some of this consistency, like data integrity and things like that. So when you're doing self-managed, you take the burden on of making sure that some of this quality is your responsibility. But again, I mentioned small libraries, and a good librarian in a small town is a wonderful thing. So they get by with a little bit less. So we now choose the operational definitions for each of these components. So data sets, we keep it simple. It's a single folder with files and subfolders. This has some advantages in terms of generating manifests and assigning permissions. And then the collection is basically, in our case, a Globus guest collection, which is going to do two things. One, it's going to provide you all places to put your data sets. And two, it's going to allow for HTTPS URLs for all of the files, and you can give per data set access control. The other two components are the catalog. We use GitHub Pages to provide dataset landing pages. We'll talk more about them in a later presentation. And permissions, the policies rather, the permissions, the retention, the metadata standards of things. So this is like, these are the pieces that we're working with. And pulling them all together, this is what it looks like. Here you've got your data sets residing in a collection that's both the combination of the storage and the Globus piece, where you can set permissions and users can directly access the data. And then you're going to use Markdown files, which will automatically generate the site. Most of us know Markdown from wikis and stuff like that in GitHub. So they're easy to generate programmatically, and then they're easy to edit if you just need to update something. And that's going to provide data discovery. And so today, we're going to teach you how to do this. So just a couple of thoughts to wrap up. We say cheap. What do we mean by cheap? You still got to pay for the storage. Somebody's got to pay the Globus subscription, stuff like that. But it's about minimizing the cost to the project. So, you're a research project, you're a research group, you want to do these things. We want to make sure that you're not spending a ton of time and effort on maintaining systems. So you got GitHub Pages, and there's other solutions to host the catalog for free. It does mean that the discoverability of your data is appropriate for the public. That's one trade-off. But the data set storage itself, it's either going to be something that is provided by your institution or somewhere you're working at. And even if you are paying for your storage itself, it directly scales by usage. You would only need to purchase as much as you're actually using. And like our institution provides researchers the ability to buy modest amounts of highly reliable and highly available storage, and make it accessible via Globus. And this is, not everyone has to have a Globus subscription, only the site providing the collection. They've crossed the point of over 70% of the R1s and more institutional subscribers. And you don't necessarily have to use Globus and GitHub for the model. You could build this on other solutions as well. It's just, this is the one that works well for a lot of our academic institutions. And then being fair, definable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, we ensure that there's human and machine readable metadata on all the landing pages, that there's a catalog and unique identifiers. The data is accessible over an open protocol and access control through HTTPS, uses OAuth no IDC, a very standards-based mechanism. And the persistent landing pages, that even if your data sets, you archive them or remove them, you can maintain the landing page, which is a critical part of maintaining the FAIR principles. We use schema.org and DataSite when appropriate. We do a crosswalk between those. And the machine readable data is in JSON LD. It's in a commonly used thing that Google Dataset Search leverages. And then this is kind of up to the project, but we encourage you to use widely used formats. Like our example is use FITS, a widely used astronomy format, and usage guidelines and licenses are also defined. And then, of course, we're going to touch on this, that now because of the HTTPS access and the fact that Globus released their JavaScript SDK, we can now pull in either public or restricted data into the portal itself to interact with it and potentially call out to other APIs to drive workflows. And that's really positive. It takes something from just being a repository to really an interactive portal. Okay, so with that, has everyone completed the setup steps? Let's see the greens going up, and then so this is, remember, I see a few yeses. Yes. Does anyone got a no and they need just a few more minutes or some help? You got a thumbs up? That's good too. We'll take thumbs up. All right. I think what I'm going to assume is that anyone that is actively engaged has done it. You can always go back later. And some of you, like I said, already did it. So with that, we're about to hand it off to Andrea. And if you did everything right and we approved your membership in the group, you will be able to log into our Jupyter Hub instance. We use NB Git Puller. This is the link to the Jupyter Hub. So it's a bit.ly SRDR-24. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and put that into chat if it's not already. Okay. Huh. Okay, I didn't mean to paste an image. That was not, no, that was not helpful at all, Zoom. There we go. All right. Andrea, do you want me to, oh, okay. And we've got somebody noticing that they can't log in because we just registered this domain a few weeks ago. So if you're getting blocked, let us know.
Yeah, so please put the yes reaction or the thumbs up if you are seeing the same screen that I'm sharing. So the notebook number 1 of our tutorial. If you need more time, please put up the no reaction so we can wait a little bit. And if you are in trouble, please write in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and talk. Okay. Yes, so I don't see any red. Okay, so you should, so it's very important that you have a GitHub account linked to the Globus account. So that's that's the important step in the setup instructions. Okay. Yeah, I think I see which repository to go. Yeah, so for now, you should be able to, we're going to the repo, we're not yet gonna go to the repository. So for now, you should have just the Jupyter session open, and the link is the bit.ly link. And if you haven't done the preliminary setup is at this URL that I just pasted to the chart. So you go here, you follow the instructions to link your Globus and GitHub accounts, and then to join the Globus group. Once that's done, we are going to approve your membership. So I approved already all the memberships. I don't see anyone pending. So we're good there.
20+ people logged into Jupyter Hub. So something is working.
Okay, very good. So I think we're ready to start. Okay, so you can remove your reaction for now, and let's go. Okay, so you should have your Jupyter Hub page, Jupyter Lab open, and we are going to look at notebook number 1. So all of these notebooks, of course, are available in the repository, so you don't need to take notes about this. These are going to be always available. Okay, so the first part we are going to set up. So GitHub is going to host our portal, our website, just on GitHub pages, which is free to use for everybody. And then the data is going to be on Globus. So let's start with GitHub. So you see here, you should you should click on this on the template. Okay, so this is our starting point of so it is basically an empty website, an empty data portal which has no data linked into this, but it's the starting point of our tutorial. So you see here on the top right, you can click on use this template, and then once you click this, you get create a new repository. You click there, and then for repository name, please it's very, we use, if everyone uses the same, so let's do cheap and fair template, so the same name of the original repository. Okay, so is everybody here? So from here, I clicked on this link, and then I did use this template on the top right, and I got here. I'm just choosing the name. Everything else leave as it is. Okay, at this point, you can create a repository. Okay, so this is going to generate a copy of that repository under your account. Okay, so now you should have github.com/your username /cheap and fair template. Okay, so we're gonna do another couple of steps, and we're gonna stop and make sure that everybody is with us. Okay, now what we want to do is so this is for now just a GitHub repository. What we want to do is turn this into a GitHub Pages website. And so we click on settings on the repository, settings, and then here we check on the left to go to the pages configuration. Okay, so it's the last one under code and automation. We click on pages, and then here where it says branch, the only step that we need to do to have this template turned into a website is select the branch, which is the only branch which is going to be main. So click here, select main, and then click on save. Okay. So the engine that's building the website from the markdown sources, it's Jekyll, which is a static website generator. So it's going to take a template that we decided to use. It's going to take our markdown files, and it's going to build a website from those. Okay, and then as we make changes to the GitHub repository, the changes are going to be reflected on the website after a few minutes. So it takes a few minutes to deploy. Okay. So now last step is let's check that this page on GitHub is working as expected. Okay, so you can copy this URL and you can paste it on a new tab. So it's going to be your GitHub username dot github.io/cheap and fair template. Okay, and you should see the initial page of the Cheap and Fair demo data portal. Yes, so this is a good moment to check that nobody's lost. So please put your yes reaction if you're okay. And if you are not, please put the red reaction, the no reaction. So what we have done is we have followed basically the first two cells of GitHub pages number 1. And so we have basically used the template to create a repository under our account, and we have enabled GitHub pages. Okay, so is everyone with us? Okay. Okay, put a no reaction if you have some issues, and you can paste errors on the chat. Okay, and yeah, so and the engine that is doing this is GitHub Actions. So in your repository, if you click under Actions, you see that there is a workflow that's running. So this is the step that's building our website and deploying it. So if you ever see that your website is not updating, you can check here and you can click on it. You can see the logs of all of your build step. You see here, build with Jekyll. Usually here are all the different steps that are taken to build the website. Okay, so this, you don't need to do it now. I just wanted to show you that's possible for debugging purposes. Okay, very good. Now the next step is going, of course, what we want to do is we want to customize this. So there's no data inside this portal for now. And so first thing, we want to clone this repository to our Jupyter Hub instance. Okay, but first thing what we need authentication. So let's do that. So let's follow the instruction here on login to GitHub. So if you do file, new terminal, okay, so file, new terminal, or you can also open a new tab and click terminal here. And this is going to launch a terminal inside our Jupyter App instance. And then we can go back to, we can also do it like this, split. Okay, so we can copy paste this step. Okay, so Control-C, Control-V, or you can even type just git out login. And here we are generating a new SSH key. And so this is, okay, and then no passphrase, title is okay. And then we want to select login with a web browser over here. Okay, and at this point, you see this is going to fail to find a web browser, but this is no problem. So we're gonna copy this code. So you need to copy the one-time code, so do not get my code, please. And then you're going to click on this link, which is github.com/login/device. Okay, so we click on this. This is gonna bring us to GitHub. We confirm our account. We paste the code. So paste your own code, don't use mine. And then do continue. And then you need to authorize your access. Okay, you're all set. So now, basically,
just want to point out, I put this in chat, but I want everyone to know, as soon as this tutorial is done, within 30 minutes, we're going to take down all of the storage environments, the volumes and stuff, which are isolated per student. So those SSH keys are going away within 30 minutes of this tutorial ended. And then I'll answer that in one sec, Mona. And then for your own control, if you ever use SSH keys in GitHub, you can go to your settings and find them and delete them as well. Mona, the code, if you, Andrea, can you hover over that F161? I'm pointing at the screen. I always do that. But so Mona, you should see a code like that in the terminal window.
Yeah, so that's when you paste this string into the terminal. So if you look at the GitHub number one, so notebook number one, under login to GitHub, there is a gh out command. So you copy paste it into the terminal, and then you follow, you answer the questions. So you want to generate an SSH key? Yes. And then you choose, the important step is login with the web browser. And then this is going to give you the code, and then it's going to give you this link, which is github.com/login/device. And this is where you paste the code. Once you have pasted this code, it should say logged in as your user. Okay. When I open the terminal, I don't see the info after.
I think that's Andre. I think it's just because you had navigated on the left into the repository.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you run this from. It's gonna work anyway. Yes. So is that, yeah, hit enter there, and that should work. And if doing enter doesn't work, do Control C. Yeah, probably because you typed something else instead of hitting enter. So try hit enter, otherwise do a Control C to terminate the command, and then do it again from gh out login. Okay, so paste this again to the terminal.
And Andrea, did you see Lauren or Richard's comment? There's no docs directory.
Is it possible? So let me see. Is it possible that you here in settings, please double check here or under pages, okay, that you have branches main and you're building root and not docs. Okay, should be the default, but might be that instead you selected docs. Okay, so okay, so here is the direct link to the settings of pages. So just replace the X. Just replace the X with your GitHub username. You're right. You're right. Yes, there is an error here. Yes, it's our mistake. Sorry. You're right. So here we do not want to select the docs folder. So we want to select the main folder. Our mistake. So please go to the settings. Here, settings pages, and under branch, make sure you have main and you have root. Sorry, we need to fix that. Okay, so again, please thumbs up if you have your GitHub client set up properly and you have your website building. If there are some issues, please let us know. Okay, so we are, okay, so okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's so let's do also the final step of this notebook. So if you execute, you just need to execute those cells. You don't need to change anything. So if you execute these two, it should give you back your GitHub username. Okay. If this does not work because you have a different username here than GitHub, should not, but you never know. In this case, please do just, you can just write it yourself. So you can say GitHub username equal and do your username here. Okay, but this is only needed if the automatic way of finding it doesn't work. So execute those two cells. If this is good, if the output of cell 2 is good, then you're good to go. And then you can run the last two cells. Okay, so this is going to clone.
Andrea, I hit that yesterday.
Yes.
So we need to do it in the terminal in the right
Yeah.
directory.
My bad. Okay, so we need to do it in the terminal. Okay.
So for those of you who work with Jupyter notebooks, one of the unfortunate things is that when you execute a magic command in a Jupyter notebook and it expects input, it doesn't work in Jupyter Lab as well as it does in like the older IPython styles. So that's just a frustration on our side. So
okay, so please go to the terminal. So sorry, that cell doesn't work. So let's go to the terminal. We enter this. So let me clear. Okay. Is the font big enough, or I can go larger? Okay. So you see here, you have your terminal inside Jupyter Hub. We want to go inside Ship and Fare gateways, so you can just type C and then complete with tab. So CD Ship and Fare gateways 2024. And then we can probably do a git clone, or we can do it. Let me check this is working. Ship and Fare template. Giacca repo clone. Okay. Okay, so in case you have the Ship and Fare repo folder already there, so let's remove the Ship and Fare template. So I'm gonna paste the commands. So first of all, so let's do it step by step. Okay. Okay, so let's make sure we are inside this folder. Okay. So you should be inside Home, Jovian, Ship and Fare Gateways 2024. Then let's make sure that there is no Ship and Fare folder in there. Okay, so we remove the folder if it's there. If it's not there, never mind. Okay. And then we do gh repo clone cheap and fair dash template. I'm going to paste this into the chat. Sorry about this. Never do enough testing. Okay, so let's see. Okay, and when this is asking about this, continue connecting, we type yes. And at this point, we should have ls cheap and fair template. Okay. Okay. So let's stop here and do a checkpoint. So please put the green if you're with us. If not, please let me know what's the issue. Okay, so after we logged in with GitHub, now we need to clone the repository locally. Okay, and the repository should be under home, Jovian, Cheap and Fair Gateways 2024, and Cheap and Fair template. Okay,
Andrea,
so it should be a subfolder of Cheap and Fair Gateways 2024.
Andrea, you might maybe show them in the file browser as well, just because that's visual.
Okay, so in the file browser, you see we have our reference home folder. We have Cheap and Fair Gateways 2024, and Cheap and Fair template is inside that folder. Okay.
And then Andrea, can you see, is that, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
The image is too
yes,
small.
where it says dollar $GitHub username. That's the variable from the previous one. So just replace where it says dollar $GitHub username with yours, or use the command that Andrea posted, which is the gh repo clone cheap and fair template.
Yeah, you can do either way. So I paste. Let's see if I have it here. Yes. So this is the GH account. So with GH, you don't even need to specify your GitHub username. Otherwise, in the notebook, there is a. So let me close this. Okay. Here we are. Yeah, otherwise you can do the git clone here and fix the username. Okay. Okay, so please tell us if there's any issues. Yeah, this is too small, I can't see it. Rick, do you see what's the problem?
If you double click on it, did you, is that when you created it, did you clone or use the template repository, and did you give it the same name?
I followed the steps. I'm not sure where it now it is assuming that the repository under my account. That's a problem.
Yeah, Andrea, can you show the template repo and the create step?
So did you create it under an organization?
Did I am in the Gateways 2024 directory.
Here, no, Andre, this is so you go to the cheap and fair template repository.
Yeah, so if you go to the cheap and fair template, okay. So up here you probably did use this template, create a new repository, okay, and here type cheap and fair dash template so that everybody has the same name, okay. And I'm wondering if you changed the organization here, you created it under an organization, or maybe not. So here, now I cannot do another one, but here cheap and fair dash template. and then you should be good to go.
So did you do that step earlier?
I'm trying to download it and upload it to the link. I hope that will be just, fine. If it's a public template, I don't see why
Yeah,
not.
it's a public template.
Yeah, I should be able to do that. So always there are some other ways to do things. So I'm looking at the link that you have in the chat. Where is the template folder? Is it in the? Oh, I see. Okay.
So this is the template. So the template is a GitHub repository under the Chip and Fair organization. So it's
Yes.
Chip and Fair / Chip and Fair template. And you should have, if you click use this template, create a new repository, you should have the same under your account. Okay. So here you have okay. So you see, you should have this under your account instead of mine. You should here it should say generated from Chip and Fair template. Have you got this?
I'm doing it through the GUI. And
Okay.
I will upload the zip folder and unzip it. I think that should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if you have other trouble, maybe Rick can help you. Yeah, you can write in the chat. We can try to help you in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so this is so we finished notebook number 1. Now, Rick, do you have a small presentation to do before notebook number 2?
I believe I do. That's right. This is also, again, for folks who need to jump into the chat and look at things. Give me one moment while I've forgotten that my part's not done. Cheap and fair data, PowerPoint. That going. Some Zoom and share my screen. And okay, so this is just a short kind of discussion of the concepts of fair data as it's been adopted throughout the research community almost the last 10 years now. So in 2016, in Nature Scientific Data Journal, several authors, some from UCSD, happy to say, published a paper about the FAIR guiding principles for scientific data management and stewardship. And they did have a strong focus on the data that's being published and curated for reuse. So this is the problem that, of course, we'd seen with the reproducibility issues where somebody would post a paper and say, oh yeah, and if you want the data, just email me. And some of us know how well that goes. And so as journals began setting standards for linking to data and describing data, it became clear that some, maybe not standard, but the guidelines or for doing this well were necessary. And so they came up with these 4 categories that you should be able to find, access, interoperate, and reuse the data. And this isn't necessarily about strictly being able to exactly reproduce at a bit level, but the fact that if somebody does a study and you want to either reproduce their findings or do new analysis on it, you should be able to reuse the data. And so there's 15 guidelines. They have numbers like F1, F2, and then like R3 and stuff like that, or R1.3. So there's a DOI on the slides if you want to read that. And I highly recommend the website gofair.org's Fair Principles has an excellent summary. And in fact, I like it so much, I totally just cut and pasted some of their documentation to cover these. So, I think the principles are very good, and then it's always, of course, up to the implementer to decide exactly what it means. And then GoFair has lots of guidelines, and other groups do. But one of the key ones is giving every data set an identifier or some string, and we'll talk about that more later, that it can be referred to as. The challenges here, of course, are whether or not the identifiers are resolvable, and what the namespace for that identifier is. But again, we got a whole nother couple of slides on that later. Rich metadata. And metadata, of course, you think there's metadata for specific cases, like I have an astrophysics background. The term redshift is very meaningful in cosmology. But that's not necessarily as important as fundamental metadata, like what year something was published. And so metadata should also clearly reference the identifier of the data. It's no good to say, like, I'm describing a data set or file without specifically stating which one I'm talking about. Registered or indexed in a searchable resource. This is the card catalog example for those of you who are old enough to remember going to a library and pulling out cards, which we now think of as like all the online databases and catalogs. So you can see here how structures like the catalog emerge from these requirements of findability and accessibility. And this is an important one, that how you actually get to the metadata and data and the standardized communications protocol. And this is why it's such a benefit that Globus and other services are really adopting HTTPS as one of the ways to access data. Other tools that we use, like GridFTP, or there's some private ones like Aspera and things like that, are very good for high performance data replication, but for baseline universally accessible mechanisms or data access mechanisms, it should be standard. And likewise, the authentication and authorization should also be something that's easy to implement, or at least based on a common standard. And then the final note, one of accessible, is that the metadata stays around even when the data is no longer available. And this is a conceptual thing. People hear the term persistent identifier like DOI. Having a DOI with its metadata capture and a landing page for the data does not mean that the data itself needs to stay around. It's just good to know that it did, and who published it, and what some general attributes of it were. Interoperability, some of this is about how we describe it. And this is why for the metadata, there's standards that have been around for decades, like Dublin Core, and they've been implemented by libraries. And so DataCite and schema.org are very good at establishing baseline metadata principles or metadata attributes. And then if within your own communities, like I know within the bioinformatics field, there's a lot of ontologies that are available, you can reuse those and extend the base metadata. Likewise, in astronomy, there's a lot of common terms that are used in the CMBS4 portal. And so by using these vocabularies, it ensures that at a fundamental level, the data is broadly discoverable, and then at a more narrow level within a science community, it can be reused. And then if you're referring to other data or metadata, you should use the same type of references. So again, the other ones are that it's reusable. You've got the data. Something they'll see in another slide is like for accessible and data usage licenses. OSI, the open source initiative, they define the categories for software. Some of those licenses might be applicable. I find that the Creative Commons licenses are also very useful as just a general first go-to for licensing things. And then, of course, universities and others might have licenses. And then if you can detail provenance, like, there's attributes you can add about where data came from and things like that. And then the metadata and the data, like I've talked about, we use FITS files. You can also use CSV files, Parquet, HDF5 for the data, things that, the community understands. So those are the base principles, and there's only 15 of them, and there's lots of documentation about how they can be implemented. And so let me just wrap up with saying, like, as I showed before, how is it fair? So now you've seen the standards, and this is the slide I used earlier, that we ensure that the metadata is something that you can read on the page, that there is a catalog for that discoverability, that the data is indexed in, and every data set has a unique identifier. I just went on about why HTTPS is good, and then access control using OAuth no IDC, likewise the interoperability, the metadata standards, and then we recommend widely used formats. So that's fair data. And so, and as data and your data repositories and your practices mature, you basically start implementing more and more details. You start using DOIs. Maybe you do publish some of your data to Dryad or Zenodo while keeping the more working data local. But think about, as you pull more of these practices earlier into your processes, the easier it'll be to publish data later on. Like, for example, even just capturing some very base data site metadata, like year, publisher, things like that, giving things an identifier early in your process means that it's a building block that'll take you all the way to the time that you're referencing the data in a publication. And even just the concept, like I said this in a talk recently, that saying, when I first engaged with a research group, one of the most important questions to ask is, what do you call a data set? Because sometimes those are well-defined and sometimes they're not. And by having groups define that, again, it becomes these building blocks that when you eventually get to the point like, oh, we want to publish these data sets, you've got either your Lego bricks that you can assemble into more things. So there, a very short synopsis of my interpretation of FAIR, and hopefully everyone's got some GitHub repositories checked out, because I know that I just went through, and you're about to find your collection, which you now have an access manager role on, which Andrea is going to lead you through.
Okay, very good. Okay, I see someone just joined. I approve their membership right now. So
yeah, I'll get them their collection in just a moment.
Okay, very good. Yes. So for the person who just joined, if you can, so if you log in to Jupyter Hub by using this the URL that I pasted here, and then you can while we start on notebook number 2, you can do notebook number 1. So that's going to just make sure when you get to this step, we do not want to use the docs folder. We want to use the root folder. Okay, I just fixed the repository, so you might still have the new version. You might already have got the new version, but just in case, make sure you don't you do this right. So selecting the root folder. Okay, and if you have some trouble, please write in the chat, and Rick can help you while I go to notebook number 2. Okay, then everybody else, please let's get back to our Jupyter Hub. Okay, so in notebook number 1, we configured GitHub Pages, which is basically the static front end, the website that is going to display metadata about our data, but the data themselves are going to be all on Globus. Okay, so let's open up notebook number 2. So
do you want to share a screen?
2_Globus. Oh, I'm not sharing the screen. Oh, sorry. Okay. Window. Okay. Yes. So from your file manager, select notebook number 2_Globus. Okay. Okay. So let's start by executing this preliminary steps. So this is basically, you see, is just going into the cheap and fair template folder, which is the repository, which is the one that's been built into our website. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are logged into Globus. So you most probably have already done this. Okay, but just to be sure. Okay, so Globus, you click login, and you choose to log in with GitHub if it gives you the option. In my case, I'm already logged in, so here we are. Okay. Yeah, so you should see here under Globus settings identities, which I'm pasting. You should see that one of the identities is the GitHub account, right? Okay, so let's go back to notebook number 2. So we are logged in to Globus. This joining the cheap and fair tutorial user group, you should have already done that. This is part of the setup. Okay. Now, this is the first step, which is new. So later in the tutorial, we're going to have some data which are public and some data which are private. And data access is controlled by a Globus group. So only people that are logged into Globus and are part of this group can access the data, and nobody else. Okay. So this is very useful if you have a scientific collaboration, a scientific group. You add all people to the group, and then you share data with the group so that you have a central point where you manage permissions. Okay, so let's get to, so you see this Globus group page is a link. Okay, so you click here and you get to the groups, and here you can do create a new group. Okay, and here, so let me just follow the instructions. So basically, you do the name, you select users may request to join this group within the policies, and then you set membership visibility to administrator and managers only, so that the membership of your group is not public. Okay, and then you can customize this further for your own needs. Okay, and once you have this group created, okay, you should see a page like this, okay, where your basically the home page of your group. So if you go again on group, you should have so let me paste the link. Okay, so you if you look here, you're going to have two groups. The name of the group doesn't matter, so whatever you choose, it's okay. So you click on this group. So you saw there were two groups. So one is the group managed by Rick, which is people that have access to the tutorial and that have access to the source data. And now we have this new group. And over here, please copy the UUID. Okay, so this is the identification code of your group. Click on this icon on the right to copy to clipboard, and then you are gonna paste this into this cell. Okay, so you're not supposed to paste mine, you should paste yours. Okay, so you get it from the page, of the home page of this group, which you just created. Okay. Please do a yes if you are good with this, and if you have some trouble getting the group created, please write something on chat or unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay, so we should have done this create a group for controlling data access step. Okay, so you create a group, you give it a name, you configure some options, and then you get to this homepage of the group, you get the UUID, and you paste it into this cell. Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's wait a few more seconds. So if you have trouble, write on chat. Okay. Looks like we're good. Okay, then we can execute this cell. Okay, so make sure you execute this. So play. Okay, so you should write this config.toml file. Okay, so this is just a text file in toml format that's is going to have all the configuration options for this portal added to that. Okay, and so this is going to be created inside the cheap and fair template repository. Okay, so if you look at that file is over here, you probably forgot to execute the first executable cell of the notebook. Okay, if that's the case, no worries. Just make sure you run the cell here on top. Okay, execute this cell with the play button, and then execute this again. So we want to make sure that the file is located under the template. Okay, because then we have scripts that are going to read from that configuration file. So you see this config.toml file is right here. Okay. Okay. I don't see any red. So let's go ahead. Okay, now we are going to switch to finding your guest collection. Okay, so the best ways to follow the link here, click this link. So if you click this is going to open up our Globus page. And this Globus page, you're going to see 2 collections. Okay, and of course, if you under your account, you might have many more. So if you need to search, you can search for cheap and fair. You're going to find this. We want to do the one that has an animal name at the end. So it's going to be cheap and fair tutorial collection. And then I have barnacle, but you're going to have something else. Okay. If you do not have this, please write your GitHub username, Rick, GitHub username to the chat so that Rick can make sure that you have one assigned to you.
So Mona, do you not only write it if you're not seeing a collection? If you click on the shareable by you link, so you notice that Andrea's got that manager role. So the shareable by you. So you only need to put those in there if you're not seeing a collection. So Mona and Carol, do you see one?
Yeah, I didn't click on the shareable by me. I see one now. Thanks.
Okay. And Carol, are you good?
Yep, me too. Same problem.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you've got access to a bunch of collections, like for example, you joined one of the Globus tutorials earlier, you might have a very long list, but this way it's shareable by you. And so the filters on this page are very useful when you're navigating through collections and stuff.
Okay, so once you find your collection, click on it, and this is going to open up basically the home page of your collection. And this has all important information about the collection. So if you go back to Globus, to our Jupyter Hub instance, okay, it shows you what we need to find. So UUID and domain. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to paste it into this cell. Okay, so let's go to our tutorial. Our Globus page about the collection. You see at the very bottom, the last item is UUID. Copy, and then we go here and we paste it. Okay, and then go back, and now where is domain, which is right here, is the 6th from the top. We can copy the domain. Okay, so the domain is so Globus supports HTTPS access. So our data, if it's public, is going to be directly available under this. Of course, under this domain. It's going to have a path added to that, of course, but this is going to be the root domain. So, and
even if it's not public, it uses the same URL. You just have to authorize. You'll have to send a token, and we'll see that later on. And by the way, for those of you new to Globus, that domain, the data is not in Globus. It's actually, well, in this instance, I'm running a small server in AWS, but typically that URL will resolve to a server at a data center or a lab or something like that. So Globus is just redirecting the data call to where the data lives. Globus doesn't hold the data.
Okay. So make sure you do not leave cells unexecuted. So we want to make sure we execute all the cells. So also execute those imports that are going to be useful later. And then make sure you execute this file, execute this cell, and this is going to append to our config all of this. And so you see that these three are about your collection. So now we have two collections, two guest collections. One is our source data, which is shared by Rick. Okay, and so you can imagine that you have some data on a supercomputer, and you want to share those. So you have a source folder, and then you copy, or maybe you have an instrument that produces data and puts them on a source, on a Globus collection for you to grab them. Okay, and then you want to move those, to copy those data over to another collection where instead you have full control on, and this is going to be the source of our data. Okay, and in this notebook, we're going to copy the data from the source to the destination collection. So you're going to copy data from a collection which is shared by Rick to your own collection that you are the manager of. Okay. Okay. Now let's go to authenticate with Globus.
All right, one second, Andrea. I want to make sure that Mona. So Mona, I suspect when you did that, if you go to the top of the notebook, there's a cell to execute that makes sure that you're in that the Python environment is in the cheap and fair template directory, and that's where the copy data set module is. So yeah, Andrea, you want to go up to the top real quick?
Yeah. So this it's important that you execute this cell.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did something probably maybe I shouldn't have done. I didn't call it cheap and fair template. I called it Wildland Fire. That's a project that I was trying to maybe set something up.
Yeah,
anytime you see cheap and fair template, you will have to change the name.
Yeah.
Okay. I did that, and I'm getting no such file or directory. Wildland Fire.
You have to change it both here and also here.
I did.
Okay, Mona, you might want, Andrea, can you open up the file browser? Yeah, so you might want to make sure that you've navigated into, see how it says there's the gateways one,
Oh,
and then there's the subdirectory.
I see. How do I get into that subdirectory?
So in Python
you
land,
can click around in the file browser here. So at the top here, you open the file browser, and then you can click around like the file manager.
Yeah, and then also in the notebook, I think if you just run !pwd, it should tell you what your current working directory is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then so you can actually, Andrea, do you want to demonstrate real quick how you can execute just a basic cd and pwd command if you need to?
Yeah, so you can do a pwd, and this is going to tell you the current folder that you are executing in, and then you can do a cd, and you can change the folder. So go back, and now I am in. Oh no, cd.dot is not even working. So you can do like this.
Yeah. Simone, just like you would on the command line, you can basically change the environment inside the notebook.
No,
Okay,
probably you have to
thank
use
you.
the magic. Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
use the magic. So yeah, so to change folder, you need to use %cd, which is a Jupyter Magic command. Okay, and then we can do again cd cheap and fair template.
Or in your case, Mona, whatever name you selected.
Yeah, maybe I skipped a step. I did an ls and I don't actually see my Wildland Fire folder. So I'll go back and see if I can figure this out. Thanks.
Yeah, so yeah, go back to the first notebook and see if you did the Jupyter Hub clone, the repo and stuff like that, and where it landed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we are now at Authenticate with Globus. And we can I lost interactivity. Okay, let me reload the page. Okay, so let's see if my session is still okay. Probably yes. Yes, 13. Okay. Okay, so we executed all the notebook number 2 up to Authenticate with Globus. Okay, so Globus has a lot of, so on top of the web interface, which is really user-friendly, you can use it to transfer data from multiple endpoints. You can even download data to your laptop or upload data from your laptop directly to an endpoint. You can also have programmatic access. So they have a Globus CLI, so a command line tool that allows you to do a lot of operations right in your terminal, and also provides a Globus SDK, so a Python package that can be used to automate processes like logging in this example, and then copy data sets from one endpoint to the other, all using Python. So let's execute this cell. So this is, you see, what's going to do is it's going to display a long URL. So you can click on this one, and this is going to redirect you to Globus, and it's going to give you an authorization code. Okay, this is what allows the Python package to interface with the Globus API on your behalf. Okay, so at this point you can do a Control-C, Control-V. So you grab the code from here, copy, and you paste it into the window here, and then you hit enter. Here we go. Okay, so now I have some authentication tokens which are saved under this account, under the home folder, so that these tokens can be used by the Globus Python software development kit later. Okay. Okay. So anybody had trouble logging into Globus? If so, please paste the error message to the chat so we can take a look at what's going on. Okay. So now what we're going to do is, so we have some data which are available in our source data folder. So we are envisioning that, okay, so you have this, maybe an instrument that is producing scientific data, is storing them on a Globus collection. And then what you want to do is you want to grab those data, put them into your data portal, okay? And we have several data sets. So we just identify data sets with folders. And so we have several folders with data inside, okay? And we can CMB, so it's, so I'm a cosmologist, I work on cosmic microwave background, so I created a little sample data set with FITS files, which is a binary format used a lot of in astronomy, and some JPEG visualization of those files. So those are sky maps of different components emitted by the sky in the microwaves. So one is a cosmic microwave background, and we can do Shift Enter here to execute this cell. So you see this is telling Globus through the API to get the CMB folder from the source repository and transfer it to the destination repository, okay? And in this case, data is not going through our computer here, is not even going through Globus. Globus is just setting up a direct connection between the two endpoints. So the endpoint managed by Rick and the endpoint managed by you, by each of you, and transferring the data. And also,
the one I was going to say, the one thing it does upload from the computer, because Globus transfers don't normally do this, is what Andrea is about to show.
So I see a question, the endpoint. So the endpoint is, so if you go to endpoints, and so this endpoint is also running on AWS, and it's is hosted on the same virtual machine that's running Jupyter Hub, and so and you can access it through the Globus app. If you go under collection, shareable by you. Okay, so this is, you're gonna have here your own endpoint. Okay, and this is going to also create a JSON file, which is basically a description of a very high level description of our data. So if you execute the following cell, this is going to show you a couple of files which are in this data set. So you see they are FITS files, so there's some binary format which is used to save full sky images of the universe. And this is, and then you see they are at different microwave frequencies. So we have a 23 gigahertz map and a 100 gigahertz map. Okay, and then here is the URL of the file. So we have enabled HTTP access, so you can get to the file here. So, but not yet because it's not public yet. But once, but if you authenticate with Globus, you could be able to access the file there. And then we have the checksum, so to verify the integrity of your data. So every time you need to copy the data from one point to another, you want to make sure that during the transfer there are no damage being made to the data. So you want to double check the checksum. Okay, and now same thing, we can do the same on the other data sets. Okay, so they're just other folders. So this is setting up all of the transfers for you, and we can see in our file manager, if you go, so we are working inside the chip. So the notebooks are outside here, but they're always executing inside the Chipperfair template folder. And you see that these JSON files are popping up. Okay, so these are, you can even click on them. You see there are several items in here. So you see that they're popping up as soon as a transfer is done. We have this script that interfaces with the Globus transfer API and gets metadata about the file. So in this case, the URL and the checksums. And yeah. And these are the metadata that we want, that are going to be the starting point for our data portal. Okay. And so if you execute this, you're going to see all your manifest files. If you have oh, good. Yes, you can check the transfer also in the activity tab of Globus if you are familiar with that. And okay, next we're going to browse on your endpoint. So if you execute the following cell, this is going to give you a URL you can click. So you see this URL is basically just telling the Globus web app to go to the root folder of your endpoint. Okay, so you
collection.
see.
Sorry, Andrea. It's like this is the Globus semantics things. There's a endpoint is a particular term, and now they changed it on us years ago, and so we try to be a little bit clearer because endpoints are generally what you run on the server, and you can have many collections on it. So yeah, sorry, Andrea. I just wanted to make sure that we used that.
Yeah, so I see a question about the, so the source, correct. So we are copying data from the source UUID collection to our own collection, okay? So, and we specify that we want the datasets under the datasets folder. So you double click on the datasets folder and you see your folders are here. And if you click on the folders, you see that the files are inside the folder. Okay.
At the bottom of the folder, you'll see the manifest.
Yeah, so we have the manifest both on the collection and also on also copied locally on our Jupyter Hub home folder. Okay. Last, we are going to set permissions. So by default, everything is private. So only who has access to the Globus collection is able to get to those data either with HTTPS or through Globus. But now we want to set them public. So if you execute this other cell, so we are under setting permissions. This is going to give you a URL. You click on it. Okay, so we are at setting permissions in notebook number 2. And here, so I have, here you can set your own permissions. So if you click on the top, add permissions, okay? And then we're gonna do, the path is going to be datasets, sync, okay? This is a synchrotron dataset, and we want to set that public, okay? So slash dataset slash sync, this is going to tell Globus, please. So you see how we are setting, all the permissions are handled by Globus. So even if we do something wrong in our website, still the data is protected because permissions are handled by Globus. So we're going to have metadata which are public, but then our data are always protected by some sort of Globus authentication if we configure it to be protected. So in this case, this is public, so we do add permission, okay? And then we want to repeat, so you see the instructions here. We want to repeat the same for dust and for dust sync spectra. Okay, so what you do add another permission, and then instead of sync, it's gonna be dust, and you're gonna be set up public. Okay, and you do add permission, and then you do it again for the last one, which is you can copy from here, which is dust underscore sync underscore spectra. Okay, so you have the list over here, a couple of cells down in the notebook. I have this already set up, so I'm just going to cancel. And then we have configured the folders which are publicly available. Now let's do the protected one. Okay, so this is going to be datasets/CMB. And this is going to be protected by a group. And here we select the group that we created at the beginning of the workshop.
Yeah, and if you're a member of lots of groups, you might just have to search for it.
Okay, so here you should have datasets CMB group, and then you select the group you created before. Okay, and if you forget about this, oh no, do we have? Oh, it's okay. Okay, you do add permission, permission added. Then you can do add another permission and do the last one, which is going to be CMB underscore spectra, which is going to be configured exactly the same as CMB. So CMB spectra, group, select a group, and you select your own group. Okay, so data, yeah, so remember that you always have all the datasets are under the datasets folder. So you do /datasets/CMB spectra. Here we go. Okay, so now let's, here under permissions, please double check that all the permissions are configured correctly. So you should have dataset sync public, dataset dust public, and dataset dust sync spectra public, while the other two are going to be protected.
Yeah, and you can share with individuals. It's just when you think about for research projects and stuff like that, the good thing about having a group is in the same way that we delegated access control to you for these collections, you can do the same for groups. So if you're hosting a few of these, you can say like, oh, this group, this PI, you know, those are your data sets. I'm going to let you manage permissions. All right. So Andrea, as we get to the end of this one and show people how to check stuff, we were going to do the break after the next notebook. I'm thinking we're getting close now where maybe we take the break before the next notebook.
Absolutely. Yes, we should. Yeah, I think we can take the break now.
Yeah, just show. Yeah, so Andrea, I think showed the last of the slide on. So I'm looking at my local copy. Yeah. So and another point is like these permissions, you can manage them programmatically. So like for the CMB project, CMBS4 project, they actually manage their group members programmatically. And, you know, we manage permissions programmatically, but, you know, I like being able to show you like you as the data steward or somebody you're helping, you can go to the browser, you can go to the app and you can see the permissions directly. And then just keep in mind, permissions are basically like database entries. This person, group, whatever has this kind of access to a folder. If you go moving the data around, the permissions don't follow it. So because remember, the data's on your system, Globus is just remembering what you told it. So that's about the consistency part and the quality of your repository aspect.
Okay, so I think we can stop now for a break. So please be back in 15 minutes. So let's do at 55. Back at 55 past the hour. Okay, put it into chat.
And if there's a timer or other thing that we can do.
Well, I'm thinking we should. So if someone is lost, I think it would be a good time now to get them back on track.
Yes, this is a good
Okay.
point. So if anyone needs help, I'm going to take a 5-minute break and then I'll be back. And then we'd be glad to do 10 minutes of office hours for folks.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so I'm gonna be back in for debugging help. Okay, so who is behind, please come back in 5 minutes and we can help you out to get back to where we are with the tutorial so that you can follow the rest. Okay, thank you.
Hey, everybody. If anyone would like some help or needs to sort something out, I am here.
Hi, Rick. This is Carol. I have a silly question.
I make up silly answers. I have kids.
All right. Great. Just in the Jupyter notebook,
Mhm.
I clicked enter on something, and so it was the last section in the book 2, and it took away the screenshot. So now it's just giving me like the HTML for it.
Oh, so those cells are marked down. So like
Yeah.
if he double clicks in there,
Yeah.
it becomes markdown. Just evaluate the cell. So you just highlight the cell and click the little play button or do a shift enter,
Okay.
and it should automatically re-render.
Yep. Sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Peter.
Yes, hi. So I'm fairly new to Globus.
Okay.
But I was curious, where on like the spectrum of subscription to Globus
Mhm.
we'd find ourselves to use a solution like this?
This is like, as far as like this is the base level. Like if you pay for any type of subscription, and I'm distinguishing, there's two parts to the question, right? It's like, how much do you have to pay to be able to do this? This capability comes with like the base subscription, and that includes both the HTTPS access and the guest collection capability. So there's no premium. And in general, the Globus subscriptions, the cost structure, and Lev's on the call, so you can correct me. And I think there's one more Globus person here. It's more about, do you want the protected data, the high assurance capabilities, the connectors and stuff like that? And again, if you're using resources from somewhere else, like the CMBS4's portal is built largely on NERSC and UCSD collections. So you don't have to do that. Now, the question of, do you think there's enough adoption and capability and need within your university? That's up to you. It's like Globus serves a lot of different purposes, and it's just that this is one capability like you could start doing and sort of turn over to projects saying like, hey, like one of the things we've done at UCSD, and I stole this wholeheartedly from Argonne at the ESCF, was we provide guest collections with modest storage behind them. We turn over access control to the PIs through the access manager role. And it's just a way to give them access to this data.
Thank you.
Yeah, in the simplest way, even without the portal, here's a researcher that has a terabyte of data on their cluster and need to send that terabyte to a colleague in Australia. And they create a guest collection and grant access to the Australian collaborator to that guest collection. And now the Australian collaborator can transfer that terabyte reliably and quickly. And the plus for that, the collaborator, the receiver, doesn't need to have a subscription. Only the person who creates the share needs to have a subscription. And subscription is per university, so unlimited. You get it, and once the university has it, anyone can use it.
Thank you.
So we are starting in 5 minutes. If you have any questions.
Quick question. So the template in the GitHub will be available, will remain available, but our Jupyter notebook is what's going to go away 30 minutes after the tutorial ends?
The notebooks will stay online, like the GitHub repo with the notebooks. But yeah, everything that you're doing in Jupyter Hub, I'm going to erase because of the credentials aspect. I don't want us running servers with your credentials in them any longer than I need to. So we're going to clean those up. So your repo, like the portal you're creating and the guest collection, like the GitHub stuff that you created, that's yours until you want to delete it. The guest collection we can leave up for like the rest of the week, unless you start stuffing it full of data, in which case you'll fill up the server and I'll cut you off. It doesn't have that much storage. But yeah, just for the credentials aspect, I didn't want to keep the Jupyter Hub stuff around.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Peter, please.
Yeah, so after this presentation, will there be, maybe I'm just jumping ahead, like a blog article, like tutorial, something written that could be followed, or is this, as we see, going to be the reference point?
You know, so the notebooks are going to be available always, and so you can follow along with notebooks. But we also want to write a shorter version just for reference purposes, but we haven't done that yet, and that's going to be basically the documentation of the cheap and fair template repository. So it's going to be right here. So cheap and fair template. We're gonna either add it in the README here, or we're gonna maybe do a read the docs. We haven't decided yet, but one of the two. We're gonna have some written documentation, and then there's also going to be the recording of the tutorial if someone wants to follow step by step. But just for reference, we're gonna have just a documentation page.
Yeah, and we also wrote a paper that we presented at PERC last year, which you are welcome to read and cite, etc. Like we probably should, and that's actually on the landing page. But you're right, that's a more conceptual overview. It's not kind of the step-by-step, like if you wanted to build this on your own type instructions. And I'm really glad that folks are following along, and that it seems like, you know, even though we knew the GitHub thing would be a little bit complicated, that folks are able to do stuff because now you've got your collection created, and now it's just about building the catalog and making it shiny.
Yeah, you see here on the GitHub organization homepage, Cheap and Fair, we have the link to the PERC 2024 publication, which is mostly about the architecture. So it's more a conceptual level. while you will find on the template repository the documentation. So we're going to clean up the instructions, summarize them in one page, and put it here. Okay, we're going to start very soon. So Rick, are you going to start with the presentation?
I think the way we did the outline was make the catalog and, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I totally forgot. Oh, I have the presentation up. Yes, I'm going to start with it.
Very good.
All right.
Yeah, so it's 55. We are starting again. So we're going to start with the presentation by Rick, and then we're going to go to notebook number 3.
Okay. So this is two fundamental concepts about data repositories and catalogs that I wanted to just try and communicate and share to let you know kind of what you should think about in terms of best practices as you're trying to build these more flexible project-oriented data repositories, because they're terms that, one, you need to know, like landing pages, and one that gets thrown around a lot. So let me say, identifiers are just, it can be contentious because there's a lot of things about what namespace, like DOI has established itself as a fantastic namespace, but there's also things like arcs and pearls and minids and other stuff that are out there. And then especially in the bioinformatics space, there's compact identifiers, and it's all about how do you resolve them and stuff. And so just remember, identifiers don't have to be semantically meaningful. That's what the metadata is for, to try and describe what something is. And data sets can have multiple identifiers. So early, as your projects are generating identifiers, you can slap a UUID or some other string on the data set or the files. And then later on, as they get published into different repositories or environments, you can do something, you can add another one like a DOI. And other things is like, you can use a URL as an identifier for your data set, but the challenge there is then you put that URL out there and it's permanent, right? It's like now that website or wherever that page is going to land kind of owns the fact that it's tied to that data set. That's why DOIs, they are actually just directly tied to a resolution service, a redirect that says, there's a service in the back end that maintains that. And so here are some terms that I took from a paper or a document I helped write, links at the bottom of these slides. So an identifier is just a chain of characters. That's it. It's just a string. It doesn't need to be anything else. It's just characters that you agree it's like, start with something that is locally unique, right? So if I'm making simulations and I'm labeling one like AstroSim 1, 2, 3, and some other grad student comes along and goes AstroSim 1, 2, 3, that's not good. And so as you're producing data sets, and you'll see this from some instruments, they want to slap something in there, just try to avoid collisions within the early data creation. So this is the namespace aspect. A globally unique identifier is very fundamentally, we typically just refer to these as what we think of as a UUID. Something that has a very low likelihood of collision. And there's tools like UUID Gen that you can run. There's various standards that produce very low probability of two strings ever colliding across the world. And you notice within Globus, they make heavy use of them. Microsoft, if you dig into their code, makes heavy use of them, and they work well. But again, these strings are opaque. They don't mean anything. They're just whatever you're using to say, like, I can go look it up like a key in a database. When we say persistent identifier, this is where we're talking about DOIs and other things that are tied to a resolution service. So arcs and DOIs and other stuff, it means that, or queries, there are tools like name to thing and other stuff that they should be able to be expressed in like a URL, specifically a URL, not a URI for those who are pedantic. And there is a service that is reliable. This is where you kind of want to stay out of that space. It's like let the big groups like DataCite operate the DOI services, and a real persistent identifier, is going to have that next one, the identifier resolution service that takes the ID and redirects to the landing page. That's what DOI does, or DataCite does. DataCite stores metadata for digital assets, assigns them an identifier, and also stores the redirect. So you can go to DataCite and get metadata about a resource, but when you resolve a DOI, it takes you to the journal, the repository, the whatever that's hosting it. And that's the resolution service. And so I think of that as something that the repository relies on, but once you start using it, you really need to be judicious about maintaining things. So landing pages are what you're maintaining in the catalog. And if you've gone to a journal and you've resolved a DOI, you see landing pages for papers. And fundamentally, the landing page provides metadata about the data set in a human and machine readable format. And so here I just grabbed something from Zenodo because it referenced one of my colleagues. And they do a very good job of having, as you can see on the page, details about the data set. You see the rights, the citation, the publisher, the title, a description, etc. But also, if you look at the page source, this machine readable format, the standard that we recommend, or the practice we recommend and that they use, is you use JSON LD, which is linked data, and then you use the schema.org structure. And this is what Google Dataset uses, Dataset Search uses. So these landing pages are what you're maintaining and really help to address the quality of your catalog. So the two standards to think about when it comes to describing data sets, and this is one of those rabbit holes that you can get very down into, is DataCite and schema.org. And their terms aren't exactly identical, but this screenshot is taken directly from the DataCite pages. They're really great documentation for sort of suggesting like, how do you do something? And so like within the catalog, what you'll see is there's going to be, as you build the catalog, there's structured data in YAML at the top of the markdown files that gets converted into the page, and both the JSON LD for the machine readable part and the human readable part. And so this is the crosswalk, and there's other standards if you happen to be working with somebody. So there's always a crosswalk like this, so you know. And so my recommendation is pick the term that makes the most sense. For me, calling a data set by a name versus a title, I kind of lean towards title. But I like author, publisher makes sense. Resource type general, just say what it is, just call it a data set, So as you're labeling things, pick and choose the human side, but on the machine side, just use schema.org. It's the one that's most widely adopted and likely to be interpreted by general tools like Google Dataset Search. And so here's, when it comes to identifiers and data sets or landing pages, this is what I recommend. Give every data set that you work with a unique identifier. You can make it semantically meaningful if you want to, but I'd say don't bother. Just give it a random string that you can generate consistently, embed it in your metadata, and then make sure that every landing page is presenting both the human and machine readable standard or metadata that in whatever's appropriate, DataCite or schema.org. Remember that landing pages need to stay even when the data goes away, right? You can mark on there that it's deprecated, etc. But you do need to keep your landing pages around. And I recommend trying, if you need to think about licensing or other things, start with the Creative Commons licenses, like reuse with attribution or just general reuse, commercial use only or not allowed, stuff like that. If you do build a repository and you're very confident in how well designed your landing pages are, you can assign DOIs to it. And this is actually documented again, in the data site docs on best practices for doing this. And yeah, you know, but be diligent about maintaining the landing page in its location, because the resolution service that DataSite runs needs to know where the landing page is. You can change it, but you just have to make sure you update both pages. Oh, and I realized I got something reversed here. Yes, I already explained you got to keep the landing page even if the data goes. But that for the catalog, just because you're describing or allowing a data set to be discoverable does not mean you're providing access to it. Like, you all know that I probably have a social security card. I'm not going to let you see it unless I need to, right? It's things like that. So you can describe something without necessarily giving access to it. And then in the paper I reference, there's like lots of different ways to decide on the policies of how somebody joins the group. Do they request, et cetera? So these are my recommended practices on dealing with identifiers and landing pages to get started. And then as you work with other projects, of course, this can get much more complicated down the road, but this is a good starting point. So with that, I will turn it back over to Andrea so that you can build a catalog.
Okay. Just a second that I had a little issue with my Jupyter session. Okay, one. Okay, I'm going to execute this. Okay, just a second. So we're gonna do notebook number 3. So make sure you are logged in. Okay. Let's see.
Rick, I have kind of a general question. Do you know if places like DataSite has a mechanism for making sure that the landing pages remain accessible?
I am pretty sure that they do, that is part of their maintenance activities, that they routinely track the sites. Because again, they're one of the reasons that DataSite has been so foundational to data accessibility is that it's very consistent and it's high quality. So, and they also focus on being very specific in the features and capabilities they implement, right? So they're like, we do this very well. We maintain a set of metadata standards. We provide a resolution service, and they're very consistent. So I believe so, but I haven't checked.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we executed notebook number 1 and notebook number 2. So the current status of our cheap and fair data portal is we have our website set up. So it's deployed on GitHub Pages, but has no links to the data yet. And then we have our data, which are sitting on Globus on the endpoint, which is managed directly by us. And from Globus, we got the manifests. Okay, so the manifest is describing our data. So we have inside our cheap and template folder, cheap and fair template folder, we have all of those JSON files. Okay, and now the next step is going to be to create the pages on our data portal that have metadata about our files and link to actually go and download those files. Okay, so let's get to the file manager, to the Cheap and Fair Gateways 2024 folder, and open notebook number 3, create markdown pages. Okay, so we can close our file manager. Here we go. Okay, so as usual, we are always working inside the Cheap and Fair template folder. So we execute those 2 cells. We make sure that we are inside the Cheap and Fair template folder. And now we have this create markdown.py script. Feel free to look at the source code if you like. So this is a
not
script.
showing the correct window.
Sorry?
I don't see your Jupyter window.
Let me share it again. So this one, sorry, I had the wrong.
That looks like the correct window.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good. So we are at So make sure you execute the first two cells of notebook number 3. Okay. And then we have this create markdown.py script, which is the script that is actually taking data from metadata.json and building the markdown pages. So we're going to have one. So we already have a homepage of our portal, which is the one that's currently displayed on that. What we want to do is we want to create one landing page for each data set, okay, which are going to be named index dash and the name of the data set. So index CMB, index dust, and so on. And then we're going to have a we need links to those landing pages from the home page. So this is what our script is going to do. And the idea is that you can customize your script. It's a pretty simple Python script that reads the JSON, has a little string template embedded, and it's going to output those markdown files. So based on the data that you have, you can customize this script. And to make it easier to have the right to have common metadata on all those markdown files, we are reading from this metadata.toml file. So here we are creating this file. Feel free to customize this if you want to. The only important thing is that you shouldn't use columns, because they are going to mess up the formatting. Except that you can write anything, okay? And this, you see that they have a template, a templated, a Python string template placeholder over here. And so this is going to change for each page. So the index.cmb dash CMB page is going to have CMB here, and everything else for the same thing for the other folders. Okay, so we check that we have our manifests, and then we can run create markdown.py. So let's see. So this is reading both metadata.toml, and it's also reading config.toml. So if you have some errors in any of those files, you might have an error message here. If you see an error message, please paste it into the chat so we can help you out. So you see here what's doing is looping through all the files in the manifests and adding them to a table inside the markdown file. Okay. So we should have now all those new files. So you see they were not here before. So the starting point of those files is included into the create markdown.py script. So you can look into that. Well, so it's cheap and fair. You see is right here, create markdown.py. Okay. So you see this is reading, it's looping through the data sets, and it's, you see, creating some common parts of the interface, and then it is creating a table with these fields, and it's writing it down to this file. Okay. Okay, and then you can see that this also modified index.md at the bottom. has the number of files and the size of each of them.
Andrea, do you want to show real quick just one of the data set markdown files? If you go to the file browser, this is one of the things I like about doing this tutorial in Jupyter Hub is it has a markdown viewer and this. And so this is what we're saying is like it took the metadata from the file, the first TOML file Andrea showed, and then it took the information about the files and generated some structured stuff at the top, and then the group you defined, it's like, oh, you need to join this group, and it lists the files, etc. So this is a nice thing is you can see what's being created, and then, like I said, as we'll show later, you can edit it. It's just good to be it shows very clearly what the steps are and what's going on. Again, it's markdown is like source code. You mess it up, it's going to break something, but you can at least look at it to start.
And the good thing about a static website generator is that once you have this markdown, this is going to be forever in the website, so you don't need to touch it anymore. So if and every time you do a commit on the repository, the website is going to be built again. So if you want to modify something in the template, you don't need to touch the markdown files. It's just going to rebuild the website with a new template or with a modification to the template that you did. Okay, so now that we have those files, we add the changes. So this is just a Git repository, so you can use all the standard Git tooling. So you can check the differences, you can make sure you don't mess up anything, and you can also roll back if you need to. Yes, so I forgot about this. Yes, so let's so let's do this configuration before, so we can okay. So you can write your name here. So this is from the error message over here.
Let me just say thank you to the organizers for recording this, so we can go back and watch it and find all the little things that we stumbled on, so we can update the notebooks for the future.
Okay. Okay, so if you get this error message about not having an identity, you don't really care about email. Just put something in there, and then you add and commit. Okay, and finally push. Okay, so this is going to the Cheap and Fair template repository under your own username in the main branch, and this is going to trigger GitHub to build your website again and to push a new version out. Okay, so now we can take a look if this is already being updated. Okay, so you can do so you can go to your username. So your username .github.io cheap and fair template io / cheap and fair -template. Okay, if you hit enter, you get back to your data portal. Okay, and you see now though that the table down here appeared. Okay, and here you can click. So let's click on the synchrotron, click, and here is the landing page of the repository of the data set. Okay, so you see here there are links to our JPEG and FITS files. And this is a public data set. So if you click maybe on one of the JPEGs, so you can see the link down at the bottom of the page. It's going to be a domain /dataset/sync, and then the file name. And here is the image. Okay, so you see basically Globus is serving those, is handling the infrastructures that's needed to just have a direct HTTPS access to the public data. Okay, if the data is instead protected, then it's going to redirect you to Globus, so you can log in with the identity which has the right permissions, and then you can access that as well. Okay, so yeah, so a nice thing about this, why we say that this is a cheap portal, is because we are relying on Globus to do all the authentication, data management, and then we are relying on GitHub pages to do the web hosting, and we are minimizing maintenance effort. Okay, so let's go back to number 3. Okay, so is everybody here? So please put your yes reaction if you got here, and you can see that the page on your portal is updated. If not, please write something on the chat or unmute and ask a question.
I think I got everywhere except the git push didn't work. I missed where you were going from. I'm assuming there should be something under my data sets, or do I have to click that link?
So it should execute those 3 cells.
Yep, I got what's above there, but I don't have anything under git push.
You don't have any output where it says like enumerating objects and stuff?
Correct.
Did you
I had
do?
to
Yeah, if you paste the error message that you see down here,
Or a screenshot?
There's just nothing. It's blank. It has the exclamation git push, and then when I hit run, there's nothing after it.
Did you, if you go to GitHub to your repository, does it show a recent commit?
So does it say everything up to date? So I make sure that it's a Python. I'm worried maybe by mistake you turned it into a markdown cell, and so it's not executing.
Okay, does it say code towards the top of the
here? You see
cell?
that?
Yeah.
Here it's important that it says code, because if it says markdown, then it's going to, when you execute, it's just going to do this, because it's considering that it's just text. If you want it to be executed, it's to be code. And there are some keyboard shortcuts, so it's possible that hitting a wrong shortcut and get to that.
It says code. I only have, from what I can tell, I only have the initial commit.
So
okay, so make sure did this execute git add index star and git commit. So try to execute this again. It doesn't hurt to execute it multiple times.
Now it all went away.
Maybe restart the kernel.
So you can do restart the kernel over here. Restart.
Where were you? Because I wasn't looking at your screen. Where do I restart the kernel?
Over here.
Okay.
Restart the kernel.
Okay.
And then you can re-execute the notebook all the way from the top.
Okay. I will
re-execute everything, and then you should be able to hopefully push the do the commit and push the commit.
Okay, I'll try. Thanks.
Okay, so remember to execute also the very, very first cell. Execute this one, which is very important to make sure we are in the right folder. Okay. Anyone needs help? So we should be at the end of notebook number 3, and we should have our data portal that finally has some data to show. So on the home page, we have this datasets table, which is linking to the 3 data sets, and we can click on any of them. So let's see if we click on the CMB. Okay, right. This is showing us the data anyway, the metadata, and then you see it's asking us for authentication if we want to access the data. Okay. Yeah, so Globus is basically handling permissions for us. Okay. Then let's go ahead yeah, so the most important part of the tutorial is completed. So we got to a data portal which gives access to the data. Now, next we are going to take a look at the portal, see what are some of the features, and then we're gonna do some improvements on the portal for adding more stuff to the portal, and at the very end, interactivity. Okay, so first we want to. So there are some, as Rick was saying before, there are some official standards on how to publish data sets on a website, and the pertinent one is the JSON LD schema. So basically, inside the HTML page, we want to add some identifiers that can be programmatically accessed by tools, for example, Google rich results. So Google can identify if there are data sets on a page. So if you click on the link here, it's going to bring you to this search.google.com URL. And here we want to paste the page of one of our data sets. So let's take, for example, the synchrotron one. Okay, so here you are at, yeah, let me just paste it. Okay, so you are at this page and you paste the URL right here, and Google is going to test this URL and make sure that the JSON LD is properly configured. So you see it says one valid item detected. So you see it found there is a metadata about a data set. You see, finds the name, finds the type, an ID. So you see, these are some metadata about the file that we embed into the page so that they can be picked up by some tooling that can automatically knows what to look for. So this is being a standard, can be easily parsed by automated tools. Okay. Next, so everybody is fine? Were you able to validate the page? Please write to the chat if you had some trouble with that. Otherwise, we can switch to the next topic. So Rick, are you going to share the screen?
Yep. Okay, and I'm watching the clock. We're down to about 30 minutes. So I think for most of these, you can follow along. I think when we get, they're just executing cells and stuff like that. For the last one, if we get to number 7, it might just be a watch and see. So briefly, those manifest formats that we use is based on a format from a tool called BD-Bag, Big Data Bag. And it extends a format called Bagit, and Bagit's a very popular convention for structuring files for curation. It's used by the Smithsonian. If you talk to librarians, they know exactly what we're talking about. But BD-Bag is a tool that leverages the capability to basically that manifest and other things to, even if you download data over HTTPS, checksum it, use the URLs and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the tool to create a bag. First, make sure I'm in the right folder, and I'm going to make a directory called sync. This is going to be the folder where the data lands in the Bagit format. It's a very simple structure we'll see. Now, the BD-Bag tool has a command line interface, and it also has an SDK. We're going to use both of them. And I'm going to use that remote file manifest for the sync data set to create a bag. And it says, it's an empty directory. I've got to stuff all these things in here. And it takes that remote file manifest and converts it into the format of the Bagit protocol. And if we look inside of it now, by doing an ls, we'll see there's a checksum, a manifest file. There's a folder for data. Bagit puts everything in a particular folder. And there's this fetch file. If you were to look in there, you'd see the URLs. So let's do that. Oh, look, conveniently, all the URLs that we put in the remote file manifest, the size of the files and the path that they need to go to will be here. So again, all the data from the data set is going to land in that data folder. And the command, all we have to run now is sync. And so this is going to go and use HTTPS and download all the files locally into the folder. And it says valid. It's checksummed all the files. And if we look inside of it, there we are. We can go in here. There's our sync folder. There's all this, and then it's under data. So by using the remote file manifest and perhaps publishing the remote file manifest, you can easily get the same data to your users. And Globus transfer is the way to do this most of the time. Just have them find a way that they can submit a transfer and stuff. But sometimes we've dealt with security situations where it's like, nah, I just want to use HTTPS. Bagit's really good for that. You can also do it using the Python API or SDK. We're going to make a directory this time called dust. So if I go up to here, we now have an empty dust folder. I'm just using Python commands here. And it's just make bag using the remote file manifest. Same thing we did before. And now I'm just going to loop over and say like, oh, look, it made a bag. And we know there's nothing in the data directory. And just like before, when I called materialize on the CLI, I'm going to materialize the dust folder. And in the background, it is going to, if you look, there's all the dust data pulled down. Dust. Now, everything that we just ran through, and you should be able to just go through and execute these cells and get the same results. Everything we just did, though, was public data. The other thing you can do is retrieve restricted data, provided you have a token. I'm not going to get into how to get the token because there's lots of Globus tutorials on that, but basically a user can authenticate and get the appropriate token, which we know we did earlier when we logged in to do the copy data sets. One of the tokens that you got was a token for your collection to talk to it over HTTPS. So I'm going to go in and make a CMB folder. And we know the CMB data is restricted, but we have access to it. I'm going to instantiate the bag. All I'm doing is the same thing where it takes the remote file manifest and creates the structure. But when we try to materialize it, what's going to happen is it's not going to create a valid bag because basically it's not getting the actual files. What it's getting is that HTML you need to log in page. So it's going to be very upset with us. And as a matter of fact, now that I've just made this thing very angry, we look, you see that this fits file, when it did the wget curl Python request, whatever, it just grabbed that HTML page. So we need to create a keychain file. We basically need to just make a single file that will go into bdbag keychain with the appropriate path. So we're going to go read our config toml file. We're going to get the UUID domain and folder for stuff, because the keychains are organized by prefix. And that prefix is the dump keychain. Yes. So did I actually get that one? Sorry. There's the keychain, and I dump it out. So the keychain basically says, for every data that I go to get that's under this path, use this token. So now any data that's within the CMB folder, it's going to use that HTTPS access token that we have. Mona, sorry. The BD bag is the Baggett format is a common format used for, like, if you start to work with like data repositories, libraries, curation. Like if you say BD bag to David Miner, who's a librarian here, or sorry, Baggett, he knows exactly what it is. The BD bag tool is just a convenient tool for the functionality for this. Like if you want to provide a way for users to download your data set over HTTPS without having to do individual curls, and because it's not that hard to get the token into this. So now we've got this token, and as a matter of fact, what I should do here is, I was going to cap my token. I'm not going to do that, just because it's being recorded, but I'm going to materialize it. So now it's used that, and at the end, it says it's valid. And if we go in here into the data, in the CMB folder, we have that restricted file that we've downloaded. So I don't know if did anyone have a chance to actually go through the steps and hopefully saw that it worked as expected? Right on. Cool. All right. So that went pretty quick, because I think the next section on polishing and enhancing the catalog is pretty interesting. But now you can use tools like BDBag to take advantage of the HTTPS format, and that's why we have the remote file manifest. One of the reasons why. The other reason is so that you know that manifest with the checksum is writing along with the data, because I have bad news. Storage systems eat data. Having the manifest is critical.
Okay. Okay, if you have any further question, please write into the chat. We're going to go to notebook number 5. So we at the end of notebook number 3, we already had the basic version of the portal. So now let's see a couple of things you can do to customize the portal a little better, and you can rely on pulling the data directly from Globus, thanks to the HTTPS interface. Okay, so as I told you before, the catalog is powered by Jekyll. So you can go, this is clickable. So you can click on this and you can go and read the documentation of Jekyll, so you understand how it works. And also it is based on a Jekyll has several templates, which was the documentation team for this version of the portal, but you can choose another team. So again, if you want to customize the team, read the documentation there, or you can even switch to another team that you like more. And this is independent. So the theming on the website, of course, is all independent from the actual markdown pages that we create for all the data sets. Okay, so first thing, pretty easy, is let's add a new page. So you want to add a new page to your portal. So you see a page on Jekyll is a markdown file down here. And on top, you need to have a YAML header. And this, so this is identified by those three minus signs. And here you want to write some metadata about that page. Okay. And so you execute this. This is going to create this about file, and then this wrote the about file, and then we can do the same thing we did before. So we can do git add about.md, and this is going to stage the file, and then we can commit and push. Commit, added about page, and we can push it. Here we go. Okay, so this is going to create a new page, which is going to be called about.html. So it's going to be compiled to HTML, added to the website, and then we can link to that page. For example, I'm not going to do it now, but you can modify index.md, and you can add a link to that page. Okay, so you open your file manager. You can open here index.md. Okay, so this is the index.md folder, markdown file, which is the source of the homepage of our repository. So you see here, you can just modify whatever text you want to modify, and you can also link to this new about page. Okay. And while we are here, let's add an image on this page. Okay, so if we open dastmanifest.json, okay, so we go to our file browser, we open dastmanifest.json. Okay, so this is going to give us the URL of let's take a URL of one of the JPEGs. Okay, so it doesn't matter which one you pick, just one that ends with JPEG over here. Okay, so this is a link to a public URL, which is displaying our JPEG image. Okay, and then we can, you see, take okay, so this is the format to embed an image. So basically it's the same format as a markdown link, so square bracket with the text and round bracket with the link. And you just put an interrogation mark at the beginning, and this is going to embed that as an image into the page. Okay, so let's go to index.md. Okay, so here is the markdown file, and okay, just for testing, we don't care where we put it. So you see here, that's the mission, and then we want to put the link to the actual JPEG. Okay, and that link we can take from dast-manifest.json. So if you cannot follow along real time, there are instructions in the notebooks to do it later. Okay, it's probably useful to just follow along at this point, because it's conceptually are not complicated things. So okay, so we have this, we can save this file. So now we have saved index.md with this link. Okay, And so we are over here. Okay, so same thing that we did before. We want to add and commit usual Git workflow. So let's do it from a command line this time. So you can see how to do it from here. Okay, so we are inside our chip and fair gateways. We get into chip and fair template. Here we are. So we can do git status to see what's the current status. So you see that we have a modification on index.md. So we want maybe to do a git diff to see what changed. Okay, so here you see that we added that link. And so we can do a git add index.md, git commit added public image, and then a git push. Okay, so every time you want to do any change to the website, you do the usual git workflow: add, commit, and push. Okay, even if you want to and here we go. Now, if we wait a few minutes, we are gonna have an image into our homepage. So you see that.
Andrea, I just want to point out, it's for images, it's important to only use publicly accessible images because of the way that Globus does that redirect. If you need to authenticate, what'll eventually happen is it'll stop trying to serve a restricted image. So if you're going to embed images, use public ones, and then there's other ways to work with restricted data through the JavaScript SDK.
Okay. So here we go. I reloaded the website a few times, and now this is serving the image. And the good thing is that we didn't even need to get the image into GitHub. Okay, this is pulling the image just in your browser directly from Globus. Okay. And now the last thing that we want to do is instead modify. So we want to add images to all the dataset pages. Okay, so if the dataset pages are, while the index.markdown is generated manually, you can always modify that directly. It's a little trickier with the dataset pages because they are programmatically generated with create markdown.py. So if you do some changes and then you rerun the script again, you're going to override those changes. Okay. A good thing is that everything you do is under version control, so you're going to notice that something is wrong, because when you go and look at the changes on Git, you're going to see that maybe you lost some changes, but keep that in mind. Okay, so if we want to do that, we need to modify the create markdown script itself. Okay, and so at this point, we open create markdown.py. Okay, so we are inside chip and fair template. We open create markdown.py. Okay, and if you go around line 103, you see that I already have the modification that we need to do, just to simplify, and you just need to remove the comments. Okay, so this is just going to, you see, if the link ends with JPEG and the dataset is DASO synchrotron, we want to display that image. Okay, so if you have a link, instead of having a link, I'm replacing it with the image itself. And in Markdown syntax, just that is obtained by adding an interrogation mark at the beginning of this. Okay, and so you can save this file you can do save all from file menu, or you can do Control S probably. Yes, Control S works as well. Okay, so we have modified the script that generates our pages. And then we want to run the script again. Okay, so we can run it from the terminal. Okay, so chip and template, Python, create markdown.py. Okay, so this is running the script and overwriting the what we had before. Okay, so if we do git status, you see that index dust and index synchrotron have changed. Okay, because now instead of having just a link to an image, you actually have the image this embedded into the website directly. So now we can do git index dust index synchrotron, so that we want to have those changes. Okay, embedded images in sync in dust and push. Okay, so I reran create markdown.py. I got a new version of index dust and index sync, and then I added and committed those new versions. And as soon as I push, GitHub is going to rebuild the website with the new version of those pages. And so if we go to our portal and we click on the synchrotron page, you see it's not updated yet. So you want to do a reload page. Yes, it came through. So this could take a few minutes. But once you have that, so you see that instead of having the link, now we have directly the image embedded. Okay.
So, Andrea, we're coming up on 9 minutes. I'm wondering, maybe I'll just do the last two notebooks quickly so people can see, and then maybe we'll be able to have just a few minutes for questions before we hit the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is finished. Okay.
Okay. So we do want to show the next capability, which is extending the catalog. So I mentioned this briefly earlier, that there's now capabilities to do more interactive stuff. And so here we've deployed some existing markdown files into the repository that will visualize files. And so the first one we're going to show, all it's doing here is generating a URL for one of the FITS files in one of the public folders. And we're using okay, making sure I have it. Yes, my username. It's going to generate a URL where there's this view HTML that I'm going to click on. So if you did this in 6, it should go very quickly for you. And what's happening here, of course I did that, because, well, you know what? I know how to make this work. Is I can send this over to Andrea's page. Okay, so because this is a public file, and for whatever reason, I actually hadn't, I hadn't enabled GitHub Pages yet. What this is this markdown file in the template repository, which you can see view, is actually loading a Python interpreter. called Pyodide. It's very powerful. So for folks like me and Andrea who really are comfortable with Python and less so with JavaScript, you can basically write Python code in the Markdown file to render images. And so if you're familiar with Matplotlib and other things, I really recommend checking out Pyodide. And by the way, something we're excited about and have started to work with is the Jupyter Lite, which starts to build on Pyodide to provide a fully interactive notebook totally within a user's browser. So what happened here was I passed as a URL parameter to this site the URL of a FITS file, and then it loaded and pulled down the image into the Python environment running in my browser to render it. Yep, and Andrea dropped the link in there. The other one I'm going to show you is for those of you who do know how to work with JavaScript or have front-end developers, is this one where I'm going to correct it again to go to his
Yeah, I
site.
pasted to the chat.
Thank you. Copy link. Yeah. So this one is using a JavaScript plotting library to deploy a CSV file from an image or from the repository. So here you can see that in the file itself, cheap and fair template chart, it's using this, and it's just grabbing the file from the parameter and then rendering it. And so the last thing that we'll show, so that's how you can think about it. Now you can have links from your data sets to these viewers embedded in your site and pull in the different data sets that you have up to and including FITS files, which are, a binary format used for astronomy. And then you get all the cool interactivity and stuff if maybe it's a small file. Okay. All right. The last thing that I was going to show, but we don't have time for, I'll show you one quick demonstration, is you can actually work with restricted data, again, using the Globus JavaScript SDK. The file example is here under chart restricted, where we load an additional package and we basically have some logging capabilities. And for those of you who worked with Globus, what you need to do is register a client. But what I'll show instead is Globus SDK. Is this example here, which what I'm going to do is, so this, what happens is I'm going to log in. It's going to check my membership in a group, and then it's going to allow me to do this. And this group here, I haven't joined yet, so I will join it real quick. Or, you know what I'll do? I'll just exit my private window.
Yeah, otherwise there are screenshots in the notebook.
Yeah. So one last share, and we will be done in a moment. Did I get the right one? Yes. Okay. So now I can sign in. I own this group, and so now it's loading the data and it's sharded. So this login capability you could add up into your site, get tokens to the user, and then they could interact with data from your catalog that is restricted. I think this is very powerful because PS and single sign-on and stuff like that. And if you have more trusted laptops and systems, you could deliver, basically a lot of data that's restricted into a user's environment for interactive computing. And with that, we've got 2 minutes left for us saying thank you and for questions. So, Peter.
So I'm curious, in a hypothetical, I'm a researcher or I'm a research group, and I come to your group asking to do kind of what you've laid out today,
Mhm.
you know, without revealing all your secrets. Like how do you, or how would you and your group kind of talk about this as a format, as a way to use it? How do you distribute it? How do you onboard a researcher to use this type of solution for data sharing?
Well, the way I did that with Andrea was he was like, we're running a web server and it's taking too much work. And I'm like, hey, I've got this other idea for you. Because my goal is not for us to do any work. The goal is to give the capability to the researcher. A lot of people know how to work with Markdown and GitHub. So the leap to the GitHub pages isn't huge. And then if they're familiar with Globus, it's like teaching them just enough about Globus so they understand the permissions and groups and stuff like that. And then telling them like, look, you are the ones who have to make sure that if you've got a website out there that's referencing data in here, that you don't break stuff. That's probably the biggest thing. But it's not, I'm happy to tell you any secrets, but it's basically like trying to give the capabilities into the hands of the researcher so that campus research centers and others aren't doing as much of the hands-on. You just provide the Globus guest collection, perhaps, and then it's their GitHub accounts, their Python code, and stuff like that. And they can template it, skin it, whatever, assign custom domains, but they basically own that and manage it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm the CTO of a supercomputer center. I'm not trying to do a lot of hands-on work helping research projects. I'm trying to give them tools and capabilities that enable them to be focused on their science while minimizing their operational workload.
Yeah, the technology stuff involved is relatively easy to learn. So once you have a first version of the portal, that you can get it done following the tutorial, or maybe with help from a more expert user, then regular maintenance is you add stuff to Globus, and then you run the script to create the pages. And so it's you need very basic Python development, Git understanding, and that's it. And you can just manage your data like that.
Yeah, and in the case of the CMB collaboration and some other groups, the data is actually on file systems that are accessible from HPC clusters, but read-only, so that you can do analysis with it and stuff like that. But then it's also still shared out to the collaboration in the world through Globus. And you just make sure that the data steward who can write to the file system and update things understands what they're working with. So. All right, we are 1 minute past. I want to say thank you to everyone. Jennifer's got the thank you and the link. Yes, we would love your feedback on this.